First time in a few years, they are not the Super Bowl favorites going into the season. Over the last 6 seasons, the Chiefs are batting .742. They're winning about 3/4 of their games. The Peyton Manning-led Broncos were the last team, other than the Chiefs, to win the AFC West. That was Denver's Super Bowl winning team back in 2015. All right, let's take you to our live Cabana cam. Charles Davis joining us from vacation. It's called vacation for a reason, Charles, but you're still working with us. What's up?
Chris, you know me. I'm not going to let anyone Wally Pipp me, man. There's just no way. If there's an opportunity to work, I want to be there. Okay, Wally Pipp had a headache. Lou Gehrig, 2,130 games later, gave up first base. I want to keep my spot and keep hanging with you, and my apologies that I'm not as choked down and looking as sharp as you are. Just not that kind of day here. That's all.
Maybe
and by the way,
before
we even begin, let me tell you how much help I've gotten here. All right. To stage this shot, Joanne, Mike, Bob, and Julie, who I just met here, helped me stage this shot and make this all work. Now, how cool is that for togetherness, for brotherhood? And we just met some of the nicest people you're going to ever meet. It's really cool.
Looks like it's going to be a fun week for you, Charles, and the sun might be peeking out in just a little bit. I know it's been raining there for you, so we'll try to get you out of here quickly. Let's talk AFC West and the Chiefs in particular. We're going to talk a couple of teams in the AFC West with you. The Chiefs are the team that's won this 6 consecutive years. They're the favorites once again, but a lot of experts believe the gap has really closed. Let's go line by line here with the Chiefs. Start with their best move this offseason.
Well, to me, it's not even a player. It's Eric Bieniemy being retained as offensive coordinator. Chris, you remember all the discussion that's gone on over the last 3 years or so about Eric Bieniemy becoming a head coach in the NFL. That has not happened. But there was also a big discussion this past year that his contract was ending, that he would go somewhere else and try and be an OC and try and make his bones again somewhere else and then become a head coach. Their ability to retain him, I think, is huge because there's been a lot of change on that offense in Kansas City. But having Eric Bieniemy as the OC, Patrick Mahomes trusts him, Travis Kelce trusts him. A lot of guys on that team really like Eric Bieniemy. I think that's been their best move this offseason.
Yeah, they've gone into the last, I would say, up to 3 off seasons now, thinking that Bieniemy was probably going to get a head coaching job, and it just has not happened yet for him, but that's good news for the Chiefs. How about the most questionable move that they've made this offseason? And you say it involves a position that they didn't address until round 7 of the NFL draft. What is it?
Yeah, it's a real minor one, Chris, but I thought they might go grab a running back earlier. It's a pretty decent running back draft. No one was going to go probably in the first round unless it was Breece Hall, and he was the first running back off the board in the second round to the Jets. But I thought they might go grab another runner because of the injury issues with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Derek Gore was coming back, but they made a big move this offseason that allowed them not to go into the 7th round, not to draft a running back until the 7th round, and that was Isaiah Pacheco out of Rutgers. That was getting Ronald Jones from Tampa Bay. And if he can step up and play to the Ronald Jones level we've seen at times in Tampa, then it's a non-issue. But I really thought they might bring in a younger runner for more competition. I think getting Ronald Jones eliminated that.
All right, so some veterans at the running back position for Kansas City, most likely this season, barring a bunch of injuries. How about a rookie, though, that you think could jump in and make a positive impact for the Chiefs in 22?
Not just, I think it's not just that I think he has to. And that's Trent McDuffie, their first-round pick, the corner out of Washington. Because remember, Charvarius Ward, a starter for them throughout this run, no longer there. Rashad Fenton, is he going to be the guy on the other side? L'Jarius Sneed, they'd like to use him all over the place, right? DeAndre Baker, who they got from the Giants, a former first-rounder, hasn't exactly stepped up and seized the position. So to me, Trent McDuffie's got to be the guy right from the beginning. Because, by the way, I think we all noticed this offseason, it is now quarterback central in the AFC West. Russell Wilson in Denver. Derek Carr remains in Las Vegas. And Justin Herbert keeps getting better with the Los Angeles Chargers.
And they got McDuffie with the 21st pick overall in the draft. How about Tyreek Hill being traded to the Dolphins? We know that Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes, and he still has his security blanket at the tight end position in Travis Kelce, maybe the best tight end we've ever seen in the NFL. But which wide receiver do you think, and they've picked up a few, is going to step up and be the number one wide receiver target for Mahomes?
Well, we heard George Kittle talk about, listen, Travis Kelce's underrated. He's really a wide receiver. But to me, it's Juju Smith-Schuster coming over from Pittsburgh. We know that he plays the slot primarily. To me, he has to step up and be the Juju Smith-Schuster we've seen from a few years ago. Catch 90 to 100 passes. But here's the big one, Chris. He's got to increase his yards after catch. His last full season with Pittsburgh, he averaged less than 10 yards a catch. I think he was actually at around 9 yards a catch. That's just not acceptable for them. They need him to eat up catches, become a dependable target for Patrick Mahomes, and allow Marquez Valdez-Scantling to really get his feet wet in Kansas City and become a deep threat. For Sky Moore, their second-round pick, to develop along the way. But to me, it's Travis Kelce, and obviously Juju Smith-Schuster has to be wide receiver one in the early going.
Lots of eyeballs on the Chiefs because Tyreek Hill is no longer there, because things have changed a little bit and the division is getting better. And early on, they are going to be challenged a lot in their schedule. I think 5 or 6 playoff teams in the first half of their schedule. How important is that first half going to be?
It's very important, Chris. Their first 7 games before they get to their open week, you mentioned it, 5 playoff teams in their first 7. 4 of their first 7 on the road, 3 of their first 4 on the road. They open up at Arizona with Kyler Murray and crew. The Chargers at home. How about the Colts, who thought they should have been in the playoffs last year, now have Matt Ryan? Then they go see TB12 and the Buccaneers. The Raiders, the Bills in that huge rematch at home. And then San Francisco went to the NFC title game. That's for those first 7, vital for this team. And it's really tough, much tougher for them because of the changes they're having to make on offense. How fast can everyone get comfortable with each other in the early going?
All 4 years Mahomes has started, they've won 12 or more games. How many wins for the Chiefs this season? Again, like last season, 17 games now in the NFL.
I'm going with 12 again, Chris, and it's going to be a tough 12 because of what we just talked about with the schedule. But I also think that this is a team that deliberately has gotten younger, deliberately has brought in fresh blood and energy. Brett Veach, the general manager, Andy Reid, the head coach. They've had to bring in new guys because at one point last year when they left Nashville, Tennessee, Chris, they were 3-4 and just gotten blown out by the Tennessee Titans. And they look like an aging fighter who might have been shot. So many deep playoff runs, so many battles in the playoffs, getting to the Super Bowl multiple times. But they picked themselves up off the mat and got it done again and got to the AFC title game. I think this new blood is vital for them. I think that is a huge, huge deal for Kansas City. If they can weather the storm early, I think they'll be really dangerous down the stretch.
Over-under for wins in Las Vegas, 10.5. Charles likes the over and going with 12. What ultimately do you see the Chiefs accomplishing this season?
Win the division again, although they will be tested, as we've talked about, in a big way by I think, the Chargers, by the Raiders, by the Broncos. I do see them finding a way to fight their way to the AFC title game, but it's a lot to ask for another Super Bowl appearance. But I do think this team is going to be awfully dangerous. Again, if they weather those first 7 really well, oh boy, look out. Because if somehow those receivers develop around Mahomes and that defense continues to get younger and faster, and they have to get going really fast too, because remember, Tyrann Mathieu is no longer there to cover up a few mistakes on the back end.
How about Mahomes, 8-1 to win the MVP award? How much more pressure is going to be on him now that he is looked at as, the quarterback in the NFL, at least definitely top 2 or 3, if not the best, and now without Tyreek Hill, his number 1 receiver?
Oh, I think it's pressure that he's welcoming because he's hit that time in his career where he's no longer just a kid gunslinger. He's now the true leader of this team, and he has been for a while, but there have been other veterans around. But he is truly the guy. Tyreek Hill no longer there. Well, that's a sign of confidence that Patrick Mahomes is going to make other people better. And that's what Kansas City's counting on. I think at this stage of his career, at this stage of his life, about to be 27 years old, that's meeting the moment. I'm not sure he wins the MVP, Chris. That's a hard one to handle. But at the same time, he's still going to be one of the most valuable players in the NFL. And if they have that playoff run that I expect, it will be because Patrick Mahomes is guiding this team.
Josh Allen, the only other player with higher odds, shorter odds to win the MVP right now, and the Bills, the only team in the AFC with better odds to win it all than the Kansas City Chiefs. sign up for an AFC Championship game between the Bills and Chiefs right now. We can't wait to see those two match up again. Charles Davis with us here as we break down the Kansas City Chiefs. He talked about those first 7 games. 5 of those first 7 opponents made the postseason last season. If they can negotiate those first 7, they should be just fine, as they're the first team in NFL history to start with 8 straight games against teams with a winning record in the prior season, because after the bye in Week 8, they also get the Titans, who were the 1 seed in the AFC last season. Lost 3 of those last 4 games to miss the playoffs. And here's the line graph that's been up and down in regular season wins dating back to 2016, from 5 to 9 to 12. The only time they made the playoffs in the last 8 seasons. Way back down to 5, and then 7, and then 9, and maybe up to 11 and 12 again, although the division is a beast. Back to Cabana Cam. Charles Davis joining us from somewhere on a remote island. I guess it's not so remote. There's a building behind him, somewhere on the Atlantic. Charles, Chargers did a lot this offseason, especially on defense. What was their best move, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, Chris, I don't have to hold up a newspaper with the date and everything, right? I'm good, right?
Good, yeah.
This is the type of hostage situation
this is what you want.
This is what we're looking forward to. Listen, to me, their best addition in this past offseason was obviously getting Khalil Mack, because Joey Bosa is a perennial Pro Bowler at one defensive end. When has he been at his best? When he had a tag team partner by the name of Melvin Ingram. And now to get Khalil Mack, who feels like he's got something to prove because he's coming up with a foot injury and didn't play much of last season, you get those two back together, look out. And by the way, AFC West is quarterback central. You've got to not only stop the passes downfield, you've got to hunt quarterbacks. Khalil Mack allows them to do that. You've got to go get Russell Wilson. You've got to go get Patrick Mahomes. You've got to go get Derek Carr. And that's what they're able to do. And an underrated move for them is getting Kyle Van Noy coming from New England, because that team was so close to the playoffs last year. He knows how to get to the playoffs. He knows how to win in the playoffs. He knows how to add Super Bowl rings. He might be able to help this young team get over the hump and find a way to win in the clutch.
Huge expectations in LA. You got the Chargers and the defending champion Rams in the same building as well. For the Chargers specifically, what would you say was the most questionable move of the offseason so far?
Well, I would say most questionable was they didn't draft a specific offensive tackle to play the right side, because they addressed it at guard with Zion Johnson with their first round pick. He's plug and play. He's going to go right in there. But the right tackle spot is still a Storm Norton, Trey Pipkins competition at the moment. Although I do think that they had a guy that they picked later in the draft, Jamari Sawyer from Georgia, who's a combo guard tackle, who may get into that competition later. Chris, last year, that offensive line was, if you wanted something done, you went to the left side. Okay? Rashawn Slater was an all-pro as a rookie. Right? Matt Filer at left guard was tremendous. The center, Corey Lindsley. The right side was where they had the struggles with Michael Schofield at guard and Storm Norton at tackle. They had to get better there. They addressed it with Johnson. I want to see if they end up with the right tackle competition there that gives them what they're looking for.
And speaking of Johnson, why do you think the number 17 overall pick is going to make the biggest impact his rookie season for the Chargers?
Chrissy, because this is a kid who has bet on himself throughout time. Think about where he started. He began his college career at Davidson, which is 1AA or football championship subdivision, which doesn't sound so bad. But Davidson also plays in a conference where it is a non-scholarship 1AA. He developed, made the jump to Boston College, and has played every offensive line position. We saw that at the Senior Bowl. Center, guard, tackle. Kid keeps getting better and better. I think he's a plug and play at guard. That's exactly where I think is his best spot. He comes right in with the expectation of being that guy. And by the way, where do quarterbacks hate pressure? We know that they hate it off the edge. That's normal. But that gut pressure inside, in their face where they can't step up and throw it, that's what they're looking to eliminate. He helps take the pressure off of Justin Herbert, allows him to throw those beautiful passes downfield even more.
From non-scholarship to a first-round pick and likely a first-year starter in the NFL for Brandon Staley, who got a lot of heat last season for those failed fourth down conversion attempts. Do you think he sticks to the analytics, or dials it back a bit after potentially missing the postseason because of some of those calls?
You know, Chris, I think he sticks with the analytics more times than not. This is a young coach who has come up through the ranks, who has analyzed all this stuff we're talking about, and has conviction in it. He believes in it. He stuck to his guns all the way through, even when the rest of us were throwing things at the television and going, not now. And that Raiders game was the biggest one, week 18, where he went for it deep in his own territory. It doesn't turn out. But he has great conviction in it. He's confident that over time those numbers will turn, especially as his team continues to get better. I think he's got a chance to be one of the best coaches in the NFL, but we can't anoint him that now. Things didn't turn out the way they were supposed to in a couple of those calls that you noted. They missed the playoffs with an opportunity to get there. But I think there are a lot of playoffs coming up for Brandon Staley. Remember, he was a college quarterback who became a defensive guru because when we went to Northern Illinois, Joe Novak, the head coach there, said, I like quarterbacks to run my scout team on defense. And that's how he started the process. I think a lot of coaches are going to start thinking more about not just being specialists on one side or the other, but getting a nice smattering of all positions in order to help them become head coaches. I'm a big believer in Brandon Staley.
No team had more fourth down conversions than the Chargers, but with fans, you remember the ones that did not work out. Let's talk Justin Herbert, who so far has worked out as good as they could have hoped. Now, and remember last year, this time, a lot of people were calling for a sophomore slump because he was so good winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Did not take a step back at all. What's in store for his third season?
He takes another step forward, Chris. Look, people looked at Justin Herbert, and I think the vast majority of us, and I include all of us in that are the media members, evaluators, the whole deal. You remember all that conversation about, does he have the presence to take over a huddle? Is he that guy step forward for leadership? The way kids are coming out of college nowadays, we're not asking them to be that vocal rah-rah quarterback that we remember in movies. We're asking them to be more executors, a lot of plays coming in from the sidelines. But what we missed was the steel and the resolve in this young man. Remember, he's got a brother who's in med school, and his brother was a 4.0 student, and he chased him the entire time. By the way, Justin became a 4.0 student and won the Campbell Trophy by the National Football Foundation, the academic Heisman. He loves football. He's crazy about it. He's in the film room all the time. It burns him when he doesn't win ball games. And then you take the fact that they got better on offense, drafted Isaiah Spiller at running back. They added Zion Johnson on the offensive line. But I think the big thing is they got better on defense. All those defensive tackles in free agency. Drafted Otito Ogbonnia from UCLA as a defensive tackle. Drafted J.T. Woods on the back end. Signed J.C. Jackson as a corner. Getting better on defense is paramount for them to take the next jump, and that'll make Justin Herbert better as well.
12-1 to win the MVP, fifth best odds of anybody, but it's all about the wins and the team. The over-under is 10. How many wins do you see the Chargers getting this season?
I'm adding one to that. I'm going 11-6 with this ball club. And again, this AFC West, as you described it, is a beast, which means I got to get into workout and get myself going, get into the weight room and start working out too if I'm going to cover this AFC West, because every team in there feels like they're capable of getting it done because of who they have at quarterback. As someone described to me recently, a former general manager in the NFL, they have 4 of the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, 3 of the top 10, and that order can change on a given weekend. That's how good these guys are. But I think they get to 11, and I think that they push and contend hard for the AFC West crown.
Okay, you told us you like the Chiefs to win 12 games and win that division, the Chargers to win 11. What can they accomplish in the postseason?
Wild card team and scaring the heck out of everyone, because if that defense starts to gel, Chris, remember, you're not talking about just shutting people down nowadays. All you're trying to do is take possessions. If you have people with empty possessions or force them to kick field goals with Justin Herbert at quarterback, you feel pretty good about what you have in front of you. So they could be the worst match for any team out there when they get to the playoffs. Plus, Brandon Staley, and he's always pushing it, going for it on fourth down and doing those things. They have the style and the hubris to be the type of team you don't want to play in the playoffs. And I think for them, if they improve defensively, that can take them where they want to go in 2022.
Charles, I think there's a rum runner waiting over your left shoulder for you. Thanks for joining us from vacation. Have a great time.
Thank you so much, Chris. Take care.
Charles Davis with us here on HQ. Nobody loves to work more than that guy. Loves the Chargers over 10. And winning potentially a game in the postseason, at least getting in as a wild card. To win the Super Bowl, they're 16-1. By the way, those AFC West odds, they have the second best odds, tied for the second best odds to win the division with the Denver Broncos. The Chiefs, the only team with better odds. And it's not by much. Chiefs about plus 140, plus 150 or so.
Check out the odds. In terms of their notable offseason moves, talk about the trade for Davante Adams. They also signed defensive end Chandler Jones. Max Crosby agreeing to a 4-year, $94 million extension. Another big move for them, but they did lose Yannick Ngakoue to a free agency and a third-round pick that they picked up, Dylan Parham, and the 90th pick in this year's NFL Draft. All right, so let's discuss what these moves could mean for the Raiders as they get to it under new head coach Josh McDaniels. Ryan Wilson here. And Ryan, a lot of people predicting them to follow last year's 10-7 record with another double-digit campaign. One thing they certainly have done this offseason is they've bought into Derek Carr. Is it time for all of us to buy into him too?
Yeah, we were talking about this during the break, Jeremy. I'm a huge Derek Carr supporter, and you seem a little lukewarm. You seem to be of the Will Brinson school of thought on Derek Carr, the host of the old Pick Six podcast there. He feels like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins are the same person. If you look at the stats, they're actually pretty similar. If you watch them play, I think if it's the game's on the line, final drive, fourth quarter, I think most folks would agree they'd rather have Derek Carr out there slinging it than Kirk Cousins. And no disrespect to Cousins, that's just the reality of watching them play. And I think things, you have to understand, how did things work out last year for the Raiders? You mentioned that double-digit win, but they did it amidst a ton of chaos, starting with their head coach who resigned midway through the year because of some comments and some emails that were unearthed. Henry Ruggs found himself in trouble with the law after an accident that ended up killing another person. And through it all, Derek Carr remained the leader of that team, and that team seemed to rally around him. I think the issue with Derek Carr sometimes is that he may seem disingenuous when he talks to the media, but when you talk to folks close to him and people who have covered him, they say he's 100% genuine, and you get that from his teammates. And that's perhaps the most important and probably the best thing you can say about a football player, if his teammates believe in him and buy in as a leader. And that seems to be the case in Las Vegas as they head into year two with a new coach in Josh McDaniels, who's making his second stint as a head coach. Would have been his third if that Colts thing, he didn't back out of that a few years ago. But here we are. It feels like Josh McDaniels has learned from previous lessons. And I think this is best case scenario for both Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr, and the Raiders.
I mean, there's been thoughts that Carr could be out with the Raiders for a number of seasons now. But Gruden bought into him. Now McDaniels has bought into him. I mean, maybe it's a great point. Maybe it's time for the rest of us to maybe take a closer look at him. In terms of McDaniels, I mean, great run under Bill Belichick in New England. Not a great run as a head coach in Denver. What has he learned from past mistakes that could allow him to find success in Vegas?
Yeah, Josh actually talked about this when he was hired early this year with the Raiders. He said, look, I know football. I knew a little bit of football when I got to Denver. I didn't know how to relate to people. And it was sort of my way or the highway. Once he got there, he was a young head coach at the time. He's certainly older now in his late 40s. And people weren't buying in. He got there. He wanted to get rid of Jay Cutler, wanted to bring in Matt Castle from New England. That fell through. He ended up getting the quarterback from Chicago and sent Jay Cutler that way. And things worked well for about 6 weeks. I think at one point they may have been 8-0 or close to that, and then the wheels came off. And the wheels came off in dramatic fashion to the point that by the middle of next season, McDaniels was out of a job. So he leans on that and says, look, I learned a lot, not so much about the football part of it, but about relating to people as human beings and understanding that there's more than just my way and that's it. And I think that's what he's grown, how he's grown as a person, and I think that's going to play itself out over the course of this season. I think having veteran leaders like Derek Carr help. Obviously, Jay Cutler didn't work out in Denver. Those two people, McDaniels and Cutler, were never on the same page. Davante Adams is a veteran who they acquired. That also makes life a little bit easier. And on the other side of the ball, you have Max Crosby, who just signed that big deal you mentioned, Jeremy. And I think now that Josh can focus on the football and not worry about the ancillary human relations stuff, even though it sounds like he's learned his lesson and he can allow his leaders in the locker room to handle some of that stuff while he focuses on trying to beat three of the other really good football teams in that division.
Another guy that people may have to wait a little bit to buy into, Josh McDaniels, and see how he does with the Raiders. Well, Davante Adams, I mean, we know what he's capable of, one of the best in the business. It was expected he was going to stay in Green Bay with A-Rod. Instead, I mean, I'm going to say that he downgraded from Rodgers to Carr. Ryan, I know you might disagree with me, but with that in mind, I mean, what's your outlook for Davante Adams as he heads into this season with Derek Carr as his quarterback and not the future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers?
Now, look, I love Derek Carr, but I'm not going to disagree that it was a downgrade. Aaron Rodgers is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Derek Carr is a really good football player. But I think it does say something that Davante Adams understood that Aaron Rodgers was going to come back, and he still said, you know what? Yeah, I want to go to Las Vegas to be reunited with my college quarterback. So what is he going to do? I'm going to ask you a question, Jeremy. I'm going to turn the tables on you here. I'm predicting that Davante Adams has 131 catches for 1,719 yards and 24 touchdowns. Does that mean anything to you, those numbers?
Those numbers, no, I mean, that would be a record season, I would think, one of the best all time.
Those were Davante Adams' numbers in 2013 at Fresno State, right before he left for the draft as a second-round pick, with Derek Carr throwing him the football. That year, Derek Carr came out in 2014. Derek Carr had 5,000-plus passing yards, 50 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions that season. So I think that's what we can look forward to. Numbers like that, which get your attention. I think if both those players replicated those 2013 numbers, Josh McDaniels would be happy, Davante Adams and Derek Carr would be happy, and Raiders fans would be ecstatic in that division that we keep talking about. It's going to be so incredibly difficult. So I'm going back to 2013 Davante Adams numbers that made him only a second-round pick somehow. If we go back and do that draft, he's the first overall pick potentially in a 2013 class that wasn't that deep. But that would be something, that'd be a little fun and nostalgic. Throwback to 2013 Fresno State.
Well, and when we saw the numbers, Ryan, when we saw, you had sent us the numbers and we were like, wait a minute, what? He's predicting these kind of numbers for Davante Adams? Now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense. All right, as mentioned, the Raiders have been very active this offseason. Plenty of candidates for, strange moves. So what is the offseason move in Vegas that made you scratch your head?
This is sort of an under-the-radar, low-key move, and at the end of the day, it's not that big a deal. Josh McDaniels, we know he has a lot of success with quarterbacks, and he's done a lot of moving and shaking with the quarterback position behind Derek Carr. Derek Carr is going to be the starter, no doubt about it. But they signed Nick Mullins. They traded for Jarrett Stidham, who was previously with New England. He was drafted there when Josh McDaniels was the OC there. They signed Garrett Gilbert, who they since cut. And they've signed Chase Garbers, the Cal rookie, who went undrafted. So they have some quarterbacks in the mix for the backup position. We'll see who wins the job. You would imagine Jarrett Stidham may have a leg up, even though Nick Mullins has played more regular season football with previous stops in San Francisco. But at the end of the day, if any of those guys are on the field, the issue is that Derek Carr probably is injured and can't play, and that's not what you want. But by and large, it's hard to be upset with anything the Raiders have done. They've gotten a lot better as a football team, not only with the players, but obviously with the coaching staff. But they have a little musical chairs going on with the backup quarterback position.
Yes, it's going to be a fight for the QB2 position with the Raiders. They didn't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick in the 2022 draft. In the third round, they took Memphis guard Dylan Parham. 4 of their 6 picks were trench players. With that in mind, give us a rookie who you think is going to make the biggest impact in year one.
Dylan Parham's going to be interesting. I think he'll get a chance to play early on because, again, you have to protect Derek Carr. But Zamir White is the guy I'm going to talk about, the running back out of Georgia. He split carries with James Cook. He's a completely different type player than James Cook, who went to the Bills as more of a pass catcher. Zamir White only had 9 receptions last year, but Josh McDaniels said, look, he has the ability to catch passes, but we like him as a physical between the tackles runner, and you see that here. He said he played against some of the best competition. Georgia was the national champions playing in the SEC, so clearly every week he saw a lot of great football players, many of whom are playing on Sundays. And the physicality, the ability to pick up the blitz, the level of competition, and he has pretty low mileage. Like I said, he was splitting carries with James Cook. I think he had fewer than 400 carries in his career at Georgia, and we've seen running backs approach 350 in the NFL over the course of a season. So he's a low mileage, physical running back that can take some of the pressure off Josh Jacobs, the former first-round pick, who the Raiders, by the way, chose not to pick up his 5th-year option.
Yeah, it's 160 carries, 856 yards, and 11 touchdowns for him last year. Okay, so what's your record prediction for the Raiders?
I like the Raiders in any other division. I'm predicting double-digit wins, and the fact they did that last year is certainly noteworthy, and perhaps should give me some indication of where this team's going this year. But I have them going 9-8. Just the division is so tough, and there are going to be a lot of tough wins to come across. So I think 9 wins is a good start. And is that the floor? No. I mean, we don't know what the injury situation is going to be, and I think every other team in that division is better. That said, I think the Raiders are better than they were a year ago, and they went to the playoffs and had a chance to make some noise in that Cincinnati game. They weren't able to do it. Obviously, Cincinnati went to the playoffs to represent for the AFC. So I'm going 9-8. I think they could win 10, 11 football games, especially if Derek Carr and Davante Adams get that chemistry going, rekindle what they had at Fresno State early on. And Josh McDaniels does the things we saw him do successfully in New England and doesn't do the things that caused him to get fired in Denver over a decade ago. So 9-8 feels like the sweet spot. But if you told me they got hot and won 11 football games, I'd be excited for Raiders fans.
500 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, 250 to 1 to win the AFC. Are the Raiders as you take a look at their schedule. So Ryan Wilson saying perhaps a step back, but wouldn't be surprised if they get to double digits. Breaking down what could be one of the most competitive divisions in football. Ryan, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for hopping on with us. And for more on the NFL offseason, every move broken down in detail and what it all means, check out the Pick Six podcast. Ryan's on there, Will Brinson, John Breach. They're having fun and talking about what has been an incredible offseason in the National Football League. Download and follow the Pick Six podcast wherever you get your podcast audio. You can also watch the program on YouTube. Football Happy Hour continuing here on CBS Sports HQ. And after a 5th straight losing season and a 6th season out of the playoffs, the Denver Broncos made some big changes this offseason. Most notable at the quarterback position, acquiring Russell Wilson from the Seahawks. And they're hoping a change of scenery will mean a big season from Wilson, putting them back into contention in what has been a turbulent offseason in the AFC West. As you take a look at some of the big moves, of course, these are the marquee moves. Denver trading for Russell Wilson, Khalil Mack, and J.C. Jackson joining the Chargers. We've talked about that already. Chandler Jones, Davante Adams added to the Raiders. We're going to talk about that. And, of course, with the Chiefs, with Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, a couple more targets for Patrick Mahomes to throw to. But let's talk about the Denver Broncos. And for more on what the Broncos did and how they may or may not stack up, let's bring in NFL analyst Ryan Wilson. Ryan, Tom Brady changed teams, won a Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford changed teams, won a Super Bowl. Can Russell Wilson continue this trend of changing teams and winning a Super Bowl right out of the gate?
First things first, Jeremy. Charles Davis doing these hits from his vacation spot. Here's the breaking news. I'm on vacation with Charles Davis, but I had the good common sense to put a green screen behind me so as not to offend those who aren't yet on vacation. Charles, I'll be there in a second. Let me do this hit. Just thinking about you guys back there in Fort Lauderdale studio. So, to your question, Jeremy, what are we doing here? So you mentioned Tom Brady. Tom Brady played in a terrible division, so that felt like it sort of greased the wheels on that path to the Super Bowl. But there's no such thing with Matthew Stafford in terms of that situation. He had to play in an incredibly tough division in the NFC West. They still found a way to get it done. Jaquazi Tart sort of dropped that arm punt. Maybe that changes things. 49ers win that football game in the playoffs. Didn't happen. The Rams are champions. So what does this mean for Russ Wilson? Well, Russ Wilson plays in an incredibly difficult division. He came from the previous division where Matthew Stafford won that Super Bowl. So he understands what it takes to play against the best of the best. The problem, of course, is that all three of those teams, other than Denver, are going to be really, really, really good. We heard Charles Davis talk about the Chiefs and the Chargers and how they're going to make a lot of noise at the top of that division. We'll talk about the Raiders in a second. Look, of all the places to land in terms of quarterbacks making moves in the offseason, this is a pretty good spot if you're both the Denver Broncos and Russ Wilson in terms of the merits that appears to make a lot of sense. I just think it's going to be a tough climb, tough sledding, if you will, for both the Broncos and Russ Wilson. Not because they're not, like the marriage isn't great, as I mentioned, and Russ Wilson isn't a future Hall of Famer. It's just this ain't the AFC South. This isn't even the NFC South. And I think a lot of things have to go right for Russell Wilson in year one in Denver. And we'll see if it happens. But as we sit here, I'm leaning towards the Chiefs and the Chargers to make the most noise in the AFC West right now.
And as you mentioned, the good thing for Denver is at least Wilson is battle-tested coming from the division, one tough division, and going to another. Overall, Denver added Wilson. I mean, they added DJ Chark, wide receiver, Jared Davis, safety Deshaun Elliott. But was there an underrated offseason move for Denver for you?
They brought back Melvin Gordon, and I thought that was pretty important, not critical to what they're trying to do there. They have Javonte Williams, last year's second-round pick, who had a fantastic season. But when you look at the numbers, Javonte Williams had 203 carries last year for 903 yards, 4 touchdowns. Melvin Gordon, 203 carries for 918 yards and 8 touchdowns. They were both contributors in the pass game, 43 catches for Javonte, 28 for Melvin. And I think he comes in, provides that relief to Javonte Williams, who is the workhorse back now, but we know what Melvin Gordon can do, the former first-round pick with the Chargers, and I think that's one more element of that offense that's in place that returns for Russ Wilson as he's surrounded by so many good players. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and I think this offense is going in the right direction. The offensive line will be a little better, but I love the addition, or the re-addition, if you will, re-upping for one more year, Melvin Gordon as the tandem to Javonte Williams.
Yeah, seeing him go over 900 yards, 29 years old, and playing over 900 yards in the season, 10 total touchdowns, certainly a big part of that Broncos offense. Okay, so what was an offseason move for Denver that kind of made you scratch your head?
There aren't any. And typically you can point to something and say, I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. I thought everything they did this offseason was textbook and perhaps exceeded what you might expect them to do. They are a considerably better football team today than they were 2 months ago. You can see here, and we haven't even talked about Nathaniel Hackett, who seems like he's going to work out really well. It helps to have a franchise quarterback. We talked about Gordon. They re-upped Josie Jewell and Kareem Jackson. They lost Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris as part of that trade. But they also got Randy Gregory. They snaked him from the Cowboys. They got DJ Jones, who, when healthy, is a really good interior defensive lineman. Kawan Williams can play in the secondary. He'll help right away. Billy Turner adds some depth along the offensive line, the former Packers player there. And we talked about those guys that they re-upped. So I think this is a notable, says right there at the top of the graphic there, this is a notable offseason for the Broncos in that they did everything right. It starts with Russ Wilson, but again, Randy Gregory on that defense going opposite Bradley Chubb. That's a huge development in division where you have to get after the quarterback. Patrick Surtain's coming back for year 2 after that outstanding season last year. You have Justin Simmons. We talked about Kayshawn Williams coming as well. So you go down the list of things that they've done, and they've done them all as well as you could hope, and they've exceeded those expectations, and that's great news for Russell Wilson, who had a ton of complaints, not necessarily publicly, but we know privately, Jeremy, that he wasn't happy with the way things were going in Seattle. He worked his way out of the Seahawks organization, and he landed in, as I've mentioned already, about the best case scenario. The only issue is he should ask the Denver Broncos to be traded to the AFC South, and then I would be all on board for that Super Bowl run.
Well, and that offseason getting them plus 250 in terms of their odds to win the division, second best, sitting there behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, the Broncos had 9 selections in the 2022 NFL Draft. They took 3 defensive players in their first 4 picks. So when you look at the class overall, which of their rookies will make the biggest impact in year 1, do you think?
Well, we just saw the graphic where Noah Fant was part of the trade package. When Russ came over from Seattle, Noah Fant went to the Seahawks. What did they do? The Broncos, they drafted tight end Greg Dulcich out of UCLA. He is a pass-catching tight end first and foremost. He can improve as a run blocker, but that's not why you have him out there. He was the fastest 40 time among the tight ends at the Combine. He's a playmaking threat every time he has the ball. He has the hair. He looks, by the way, he looks like the cool version of, God, what's that guy's name that used to sing those cover songs? Weird Al Yankovic. There it is. That is a cool Weird Al Yankovic. That's a throwback for me and you, Jerry. No one else probably knows who that guy is. But Greg Dulcich not only can do cover songs, he is a threat in the middle of that football field. We talked about Cortland Sutton. We talked about Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. He's going to have an opportunity to play sooner rather than later because of what he's going to bring to the field. I can't believe that I got Weird Al Yankovic. It was on the tip of my tongue. It came to me. Shout out to Weird Al.
I was going to say, he's giving me very Troy Polamalu vibes there. I thought he's going to get that Head and Shoulders commercial right out of the gate. Yeah, Dulcich, 2021, great season for him. 42 receptions, 725 yards, and 5 touchdowns at UCLA. Okay. Well, the NFL schedule makers, I mean, we know they have no chill. They're giving Russell Wilson his old team right out of the gate in Seattle. So when you look at their schedule overall, Ryan, is there a stretch in the schedule that worries you in particular?
Yeah, you mentioned the Seattle game. I'm not worried about that. We've seen Drew Lock play. Perhaps Baker Mayfield ends up being the quarterback. We'll find that out. Ooh. But I think once you get down to week 13 through week 18, things get a little tough. You can see it here in the graphic. At Baltimore, Chiefs on Sunday night, Cardinals. We'll see. They usually collapse late season, so maybe that's a win. We'll see. The Super Bowl defending champ, Rams. At the Chiefs, and you finish with the Chargers. And my goodness, that is an absolute tough 2.5 months of football, 6 games there. And 3-3 feels like you would feel really good about that if you're the Broncos. You're going to have to front load those wins, stack those wins, as you like to say, before you get to week 13, because there's going to be a lot of heavy lifting, and the injuries come into effect at that point in the season. We play the extra game now. They're going to be 17 games. You got to keep Russ Wilson healthy and upright to have a chance in those football games. But that feels like an incredibly tough stretch, one that I would imagine Nathaniel Hackett and Russ Wilson would rather see perhaps earlier on in the schedule. But again, that it is what it is. Weeks 13 through 18, it's going to be tough sledding for the Broncos.
Yeah, they start at Seattle and then get Houston and San Francisco at home, then Vegas in that first divisional game. Okay, well, the Broncos have not had a double-digit winning season since they won the Super Bowl back in 2015. Forget winning the Lombardi. Have they done enough to at least get double-digit wins for you?
Yeah, and I've gone through this schedule a few times. I think they go 2-6 in those final eight games we just looked at, week 13 to week 18, and they still finish 10-7. So that means they're going to win a lot of football games early on. And if they can pull out some extra wins over those final 6 football games and improve that record, then we're looking at 11, maybe 12 wins, but I think 10 feels about like the sweet spot. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving them more than that, just because, as you've noted, they haven't won a lot of football games in recent history in the post-Peyton Manning era. Russ Wilson certainly changes that, but I do wonder if it's going to take some time to get acclimated in Denver, no pun intended, because of the elevation, but because of the competition in that division. Like I said, this isn't Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay, where there wasn't a lot to go up against it with those other teams in the NFC South. I think this is going to be a large ask for Russell Wilson. Is he up for the task? Yeah, I'm sure he will be, but I think that's more double-digit win conversation than, we're going to the Super Bowl in year 1 with Russ Wilson conversation.
And we always love a good futures bet, Ryan. I'm not sure that you'd be willing to lay out on the Broncos at 16-1 to win Super Bowl 57, but what futures bet would you place in regards to the Broncos right now?
And this is going to be a tough one, too. This could come down to the wire. The Broncos make the playoffs is minus 170 right now. So now, if you're doing the math, you're saying, well, the Chiefs are going to make it. The Chargers are probably going to make it, even though they haven't made it yet in the Justin Herbert era. But this feels like the year they get over the hump. So are 3 teams from the AFC West going to the playoffs? And if you're taking the Broncos, the answer is going to have to be yes, unless one of those other 2 teams magically implode. It doesn't feel like that's going to happen. But I'm going to go minus 170. The Broncos make their way to the postseason. And again, that means 3 teams from this division, and it means a team from another division is going to be on the outside looking in. So is 10 wins going to be enough? That's going to be the other question. I think it will be, because the conference in the AFC is so incredibly competitive, so much more so than what we've seen in the NFC, where they only feel like there are a handful of teams that have a legitimate chance to make deep playoff runs. But minus 170, Denver goes to the playoffs, and hey, once they get there, who knows? Anything can happen. Sprinkle a little 16-1 on that if you want to, Jeremy. Maybe they win the whole thing.
Well, speaking of 16-1, I mean, Russell Wilson has never received a vote for MVP. 16-1 to win the NFL MVP. Given the situation that he's moving into in Denver, what do you think of those odds? Would you place a little punt there, maybe?
Here's the thing, and I think this comes courtesy of my Pick Six podcast colleague, John Breach. She brings this up every time. Last year, I was on the Justin Herbert MVP bandwagon. You have to win the division historically, according to the voters, the way they vote, in order to get that MVP award. Justin Herbert obviously didn't win the MVP award. The Chiefs won the division, and with Aaron Rodgers, not surprisingly. So the question becomes, can Russ Wilson win the division in year 1 in the AFC West? I don't think so. I mean, you look at this here, plus 700, Josh Allen. He's winning that division. Patrick Mahomes feels like he's the favorite. We'll see if Justin Herbert has anything to say with that. 2 spots down, hey, there's Justin Herbert at plus 1,200. And I think Joe Burrow is probably a better bet, and Vegas agrees, because there's a much better chance. I feel like that the Bengals outlast the Ravens in that division. We don't know what's going on with Deshaun Watson and his availability in Cleveland. And there sits Russ Wilson. So if you think Russ Wilson and the Broncos are going to take the division, by all means, 16-1 looks great. I just think that might be a lot to ask in a division that also includes Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. And, hey, let's not forget Derek Carr.
Russ has been in the conversation, but has yet to get that MVP vote. That's the situation in Denver. NFL analyst Ryan Wilson breaking down the Broncos. Ryan giving them some pretty high marks and plenty of hope heading into the fall of 2022. For more on the NFL offseason, every move broken down in detail and what it all means, check out the Pick Six podcast. Ryan's on there. Will Brinson, John Breach as well. In the latest episode, they're answering your questions via the mailbag. Download and follow the Pick Six podcast wherever you get your podcast audio. You can also watch the program on YouTube.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.